overrated job title in 2026 is?
Chief AI Officer.
When I was in art school, was do a self-promo direct mailer.
Yeah, I did.
Right?
I did the same thing. Yeah.
I did like a mirror that said, "Look at yourself. You need my help."
They might not have liked that, but yeah.
Nobody liked that.
Yeah. You are not coming back until you've got 100 ideas, 5, 7 words.
Yeah.
That triggers the imagination. You get what you tolerate. Culture is like mold, right? Like you get a bit of mold, it's just gonna keep growing. For me, it felt like I was a corporate Broadway show, which is like every day you're expected to get on stage and perform to the character that the company has defined for you. It's like my mindset is just like, I'm just here to help. I'm just a creative. I'm here to help.
If you want to know a little secret? Like you were one of those people I actually wrote to as well. You know?
Yeah.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you get a reply?
I don't know.
I don't think you did.
And today we have somebody really special on our set today. So Andrew McKechnie is one of the most exciting and accomplished creative leaders working at the intersection of technology and culture today. He is the head of business creative at OpenAI, shaping how some of the most complex technologies in the world are translated into ideas that people can actually understand and use. But what makes Andrew truly interesting isn't just where he is, but how he got there. He was born in Nairobi, raised across Philippines, Indonesia, and New Zealand, and built a career that never fit into one box, spanning agencies, global brands, and now frontier tech. Quick personal note, I actually joined JWT Singapore back in 2009, and Andrew had just left JWT Singapore to move to the States, and he was a little bit of a legend there, as a young creative joining. The work that he did was something that, I and a lot of my peers that joined that year was something that we aspired to, and that really helped us set, where the bar was. Since then, he has gone to lead at Apple, served as the chief creative officer for Verizon, and now helps define what creativity looks like in the age of AI. And somewhere along the way, we went from distant admiration to now friends. And, this is a conversation really about experimentation. It's about reinvention. It's really what it means to stay relevant in a world that is constantly and rapidly changing. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you
Welcome,
for making
Andrew.
the drive here.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you having me in your home and the very generous introduction.
Oh, of course. I mean, like when we connected, it was probably like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
2023. I think I had just come off of Walmart.
Yeah.
I think you were moving to this new secretive place, and I think we met in Mallorca, Spain.
We did.
Right.
Very, very nice place to have a conversation and meet with a group of other very interesting group of friends and people.
Yeah.
With a lot of I think interesting perspectives and experiences, which was kind of why we were there in the first place. But yeah.
And it's a great topic for us to start with, because what we were all trying to accomplish, and for those who don't know, we were trying to, as like a lot of top creatives in the world, we all gathered in Mallorca to really see how we can really start a venture capitalist or angel investment network and whatnot, right? And it was just us trying to figure out, we have been trained so heavily in creativity,
right. Yeah.
And creative is a true driving force in business. And, I guess we were trying to figure out, how do we turn that into something of our own, right? Back in the day. And
how do we get back our value?
Get back our value, right? And really use our creativity as a driving force, for driving commerce, for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the conversation today will be about, right? Like we will lead to, talking about, creativity, business, technology, how those things, but also, the pivots needed, for a lot of young creatives listening to this conversation, a lot of young folks who want to become executives and leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs who might want to take things out from here to really apply to their day to day. We would really love to dig deep into
absolutely,
into your journey, your beginnings, your learnings, and how did you get to here, and what are some of the actual frameworks that we can actually extract, to then share with our audiences to go what can they apply, right? It's about learning. My dad used to always say, the day you stop learning is the day you die, right? So
very true.
It's what can we impart to the next generation, and I think this is what today is all about.
Awesome. Yeah. Excited.
Yeah. So you were born in a different country, and then you traveled so much, and now settled in America. I would love to hear from you. How was it growing up, and how did that experience traveling to different countries build you as a creative person?
I mean, I think obviously I was very young when I was moving around, as I've kind of reflected on career and personal life, and kind of often the question of where is home?
Mm-hmm.
So I had this very fortunate upbringing of kind of born in Nairobi, Kenya, and partly because my parents were working in Kenya at the time.
What did they do?
So my dad was in insurance, which again was not what not what most people expect. It's either Secret Service or missionary or something to that effect. And so no, it was he'd started in the insurance industry and did a few stints in different countries, and started to kind of become known as a person that could go into these emerging markets. Now when I think about it, it's I've always been kind of on the frontier building capabilities and things in a different kind of context, but I had this amazing kind of opportunity to be kind of born into. Now you're in these different cultures. I don't have a huge recollection of Kenya. I have some recollections, but pretty fleeting memories of things like.
How old were you?
Wow.
I was 3. So,
right.
Part of my upbringing is adapting to those cultures because I was the foreigner. And so eventually we moved to Auckland, and then that was kind of where I had I would say my more formative experience of being in one place, one time, from kind of what would be equivalent of middle school here, but intermediate school in New Zealand and high school through to university. So I kind of then had a pretty grounded, kind of my teenage years, the formative years in one place, which I think was really important. My parents then got itchy feet again and then moved to Singapore.
Got it. And that's where you started your career.
Yeah. Because I had just come to the end of essentially my university degree at Auckland University of Technology, and one of the components of that was to do an internship. And my dad at the time was just moving to Singapore to do a kind of a 3-year secondment there, and so it was kind of well, why don't you go to Singapore and maybe do an internship there? You can kind of help mom and dad set up and get them settled in. It'll be kind of an interesting experience. Started with doing a diploma in advertising, and that very quickly was where I then was this totally makes sense to me as well. I excelled in that area, and I remember my lecturers at the time kind of saying you should be across the road, and I was I maybe, but this is where I am. I couldn't get into those because I was very hands-on. I built for one of the, I think it was a billboard assignment, create a billboard, and I created a 3-dimensional billboard and made a model of it. And instead of it being upright, I said what if the billboard was actually, so early days of experiential, I made an experiential billboard that someone could walk up to. I think it was for a natural product, and I was what if you built a garden as the billboard? Cool. And they were this is amazing, this is really cool. And that was when I first was okay, maybe I'm not so bad at this. And so I think that was when I started to go okay, advertising, there's an area of advertising that I think I'm really interested in, which whether it's on the creative side, how do I get into that? the degree though was setting me up more so from the standpoint of like going in from an account management standpoint.
Yeah.
And so the internship I originally got, the door I went through was essentially as an account, an AE, an account executive internship.
So what?
Because I didn't have the technical skills to be an art director, and they didn't really train you to be a copywriter in doing that program. It's not like here in the US where like you have Miami Ad School. It's like it was not an ad school at all. They had a award, but the award came slightly later in Australia and New Zealand. And so that was kind of then the door that I went through was through that. And then
What year was that?
2001.
And I mean, that was probably in Singapore, right? That was the golden age of
advertising
in Singapore.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And I made a beeline straight to the ECD at the time, and I just said like, I want to be in the creative department. What do I need to do? And he's like, well, what can you do? He's like, can you, do you know Photoshop? Do you know that? I was like, yeah, no. It led me to being like, well, I can write.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, well, let's see if you can write.
Yeah.
Can you really write? And I couldn't really write as a copywriter, but I was smart enough to know that, okay, like if I had the right guidance, maybe I could take a swing at it. And so that was kind of what started.
Agency was that?
That was at Foot Cone and Belding.
Oh, wow. It was FCB.
So it was originally they at that time they were called Foot Cone and Belding, and then what later became FCB.
Who was the ECD?
So the ECD at the time was Chris Keim, who's we'll go on talk about obviously like a lot of the mentors I had, but he was one of my first mentors. And then Rob Sherlock, who took over the Singapore office at that time. Chris Keim went to Hong Kong. And then the ECDs essentially that were running that office was Rob Gax and Eric Yo.
Oh, so
so
Gax
they were
was there for like a while. I mean, he's still there, but like I didn't know he came there.
Yeah, so he was at Foot Cone and Belding at that time, and I was there for 3 years. And so the CDs, and then kind of the people around me, Raymond Kwa, Elena Fletcher, Dali Meskam, they all became kind of like my mentors. They gave me a what was essentially a 3-month project to build a portfolio, because I didn't have a portfolio, and they put me through the ringer. It was a really, really tough experience to go through, but at the end of it, they're like, and they put me on real projects, real briefs.
Yeah.
But they were like classic, like, you are not coming back until you've got 100 ideas.
Wow.
And that's a very Singapore was my training ground as well, and it's very, very similar, right? For me, my mentor was Joji, and Juggy.
Yeah.
And like I was an intern at BBDO, and it was like,
creatives,
you gotta come. And I was doing an internship, a non-paid internship for a year, and it was like Joji was like, I need one idea every day.
Yeah.
Like every day was like a doctor saying I should take an idea, get rejected, take an idea, get rejected, get.
That rhythm is fascinating because it breaks you down, right? It's like you've got your past the wall of ideas.
Yeah.
So then maybe like you've got to get all of it out on paper to then get to the one or two that start to like, and that you start to learn that, actually it's not those first few ideas. Oftentimes you have to dig deep, and that it is possible, because I was like, there were some projects I was like, come on, like I've did, like there's something here. It's like keep going, and then boom, and then it would be something like, oh wow, like okay. So they were really like building the foundations of like a creative mind. Again, Rob Gax at the time made me trace like essentially copy fit the layout. So tracing paper over the layout where the image may go, and handwrite the copy
so this
into
was
the
all during the internship, or right.
Well, and then moving on as like it's like you got the job, but that didn't change. Like,
but that's such an interesting path that you chose, and like how your mentors kind of believed in you, and
I wonder about that, like what it was.
Like I'm sure like there must have been something that
they saw in you.
It's I don't know, like I'm always like curious as to like because I've had very good, like, especially in Singapore, I had like very good mentors, and I was always paired with the most senior art directors,
That's amazing.
which is like that would never happen in the US generally. And so I was always like, well, is it just because I was like the angmo, like the white kid, like who could write? But there was also amazing writers in Singapore. So it's like, not really. It's like, so what, for whatever reason, they obviously thought that I had the, you know, the ability and the energy and all of those things to partner with.
For just from an audience point of view, you know, like two things I really think they can take away, you know, from this part of your career, which is, one is know where you want to go, but that doesn't have to be the first entry point, which is you started from account management, but you knew creative was something, right? But you worked your way into it. And the second thing is this idea of repetition creates, you know, like I always say, which is like, you know, talent is nothing but hard work, right? And it's just like doing that one thing over and over again, which might seem very, very boring, but that really, I mean, in case of you, which is like go with these ideas and headlines and keep on doing it, bring, you know, your ECD is asking you to come and do it over and over again, because in today's day and age, quick success is celebrated, especially with social media, and everybody, you know,
you need quick ideas, which means you might not get to the deeper ideas.
But to get to those great deeper ideas, you do need to go and do that, you know, exercise of doing it over and over and over until you really build and learn, you know, what your framework is, you know, to get to good creativity.
And I think like you can write 5-7 words, like, and that triggers the imagination. I like that tool is something that I use today, right? Like that, you know, the kind of thought process and that goes into that, and the discipline to try to you know, the art of reduction to get to that level is like, okay, I knew at that point then that the power of words, right, like can probably carry me through a lot of situations. And further in my career, absolutely, you know, in terms of like a strategy deck or a positioning line or sending a thought to someone without having to like have everything built around it. Like those words are the things that usually capture someone's imagination.
That makes me wonder, like, now you're working at OpenAI, how do you think that creative aspect of copywriting works alongside the chat GPT that a lot of people are trying to use today to help them write those strategy decks, that vision, that point of view that they want to? How do you see that shifting in today's time?
I mean, there's obviously lots of different ways that now it enables me to be more, you know, I would say like I can proliferate like the ideas and get them out quicker for me, because I have the context and the backdrop of those experiences. But I've still come at it very much from a like, here's an idea. I've already come up with the idea technically in my mind. It's just like I want to reframe it. I want to think of like, you know, go a little bit deeper on that. And basically it becomes my sparring partner, the traditional like creative partner, in the sense that I would have had that with someone else. I'm self-policing ChatGPT though a lot. I'm like, no, like this is not good enough, right? And so, or there's something where I'm like, okay, that's a nugget, and I can pull on that, but often I'm still using language to reframe it in a way that I know is going to be more, you know, more powerful ultimately.
But you had that training,
correct,
right? In the analog days. Right. I think for youth today who are just like, you know, there's a lot of junior folks who just like, you know, straight and jump into that. Like, how do you recommend, you know, somebody who's up and coming who might not get that opportunity? Because a lot of young folks just would jump onto it first round, and, you know, the ideas tend to be very
like
base level.
five ideas pop out, whatever, however many
like,
ideas
hey,
you need.
Bro, there's the ideas.
The challenge is like, I think you need to have, you know, some experiences and context to be able to know sometimes like what has come before you. So I do think like I've always tried to be a good student of understanding things that are in the past, or complementary to the world that you're in, because I think it's important then to understand, is the idea that you're putting on the table, is it unique? Is it differentiated? So I think like for young people, I would be kind of like trying to get them to make sure that, are you just like adding to the noise, or are you actually, is there a point of view and something that you feel can like bring more value to the work that you do, right?
Mm-hmm. I would just say, I mean, again, you're an insider at OpenAI. Are there little tricks, tips, that our young folks can use, that you?
Well, it's interesting because I think everyone just uses the tools in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think I do think that it's important that you figure out like how it fits into your world and the way that you work. And the only way that you can do that, and I did this prior to joining OpenAI, was I was like, I need to understand like the different platforms, the different tools, which I've always been again, a good student of that because of, I'm in marketing and advertising.
Right.
Like you need to know where the technology shifts are going.
Right.
You need to have a strong understanding of that if you are then going to direct teams, whether it's new platforms, new social media, companies, like whatever it is. Like the evolution of technology has been constant in our industry. Early days, it was like, okay, like there's, interactive as a thing. And it's like, you're going to need to figure out like how to make microsites and, and like, digital advertising. And so I think as a creative, you're trained to understand how to use tools.
Yeah.
But that's not for everyone either. I'm more of a generalist in that respect, where it's like I like to have a broad understanding of the different things that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some people are kind of like, well, I'm a writer and I'm a comedy, I write funny stuff, and it's like that's their world. But I still think like, okay, like, well, what are the things that make you funnier then? Technology can also be conducive to that.
And funny is contextual too, right? Like the funny,
Correct.
you and I got trained in Singapore versus the slapstick humor in America, like two different worlds.
So to going back to your point about like what should people be doing, I think it's like I would just become familiar with the tools, and it's whether it's OpenAI or other tools, it's like because you're gonna find something that will work with your methodology at some point, and I think that's the only way to really like start to understand it better.
Yeah.
And it, things are always evolving and shifting. And so it's like, it all goes to where the experts are. And it's like, suddenly there's like, this heightened, like we need a chief digital officer. I mean, remember that was a thing, right? Chief digital officer. And then it was like, there's chief AI officer now, like, chief meta officer, like,
titles are changing completely.
Those things I think spike because they're like, we need someone that knows the space really well to help get everyone up to speed. But then that eventually plateaus.
Do you have any new job position or title in your department that never existed before but is there now?
Not really. I think the interesting thing is like the types of people that are successful in the creative environment within OpenAI are still like the makers. The people that like have the curiosity and the taste and the craft of whatever they're generally, design or a writer or art director, motion, like, there are still core capabilities, but they're intrinsically more motivated to make things. And that's very different from the past, which would have been like, even for myself being a writer, now the kid that didn't grow up knowing how to do, Illustrator and Photoshop and all these tools, is like, okay, like I can apply what I've always felt was a strong design kind of capability or art direction capability that I've always been like, I'm not just a writer, I can do all these things. I'm able to put that out there now in a way where it's like I can curate that world myself.
And do you think people who might not have access to even pay tuition for
absolutely.
fancy art school, like now be able to develop if
Yeah.
they're curious enough, develop
Yeah.
certain skill sets that they can actually be successful in,
Yeah.
in this field.
Yeah, because
Right.
you don't need all
Where
of
there's
those
a will, there's a way.
Huh?
expensive
Where there's a will,
tools.
there's a
Yeah.
way.
One thing that our audience and a lot of people don't realize is, the great in advertising that Singapore has produced, right? Like David Droga, graduated from the
Yeah.
School of Singapore, right? Like
Yeah.
Neil French, right? I mean, Linda Lark, right? Like there are all these like legends, who have done work that we now actually, hail so high, had
Yeah.
all been there at one point, and probably, around
Yeah.
the same time that
Yeah.
you were there, right? Like, so could you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about just coming from that hyper creative, hyper chart, hyper energetic, right? Like it was a great time. It was a golden era of advertising. In
Yeah, I
Singapore.
mean, Singapore was an amazing environment to just be kind of like start the career there, because as a young creative, you're trained as like, well, it needs to be simple enough that most cultures can understand it.
Yeah.
So I think Singapore is very good at that, because I mean, a lot of people would criticize Singapore and others because it was kind of like, well, that's just like, it didn't feel like real work for a lot of people, but
Why do they say so?
just because it seemed almost too simple, too like, how are you actually going to sell this product without a whole bunch of information?
Product
right?
benefits and whatnot.
You
It was
know,
very
it's-
just like a core idea, and how do you turn it into
And you
almost like a
could
visual
argue
solution?
it's like,
Okay.
probably more higher order brandy kind of executions, but it was a playground, and it allowed that the creative industry to really experiment and show its conceptual and creative chops. And like, I mean, Singapore like performed amazingly well, against the rest of the world when it came to like, top creatives.
Yeah.
That kind of led me to really understand as a creative process is like, okay, like go for more human emotion, the
Yeah.
emotional insights. And so that became a thread through a lot of my work is like,
Yeah.
if you can speak to the emotional and the human aspect of what you're trying to put out there, then you're more than likely gonna hit it, because that's
And I
an
think
important
this
piece.
insight is now, it's just almost like everything is cyclical. It's like now more relevant than ever because, again,
Right.
Yeah.
social is such a visual medium.
Yeah.
And then because of social media, the work travels across different languages, different countries,
Yeah.
different cultures, right?
Yeah.
And like it's like sometimes I feel like the days of archive are
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
because you can
yeah,
use those
totally.
principles to
Yeah.
make, impactful
Yeah.
social creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like that whole period, after FCB, I went to BBDO, and there's another kind of theme amongst like the places that I went to at the time were a little bit more on the underdog side. Like
Yeah.
I liked going into places that, had something to prove. And I think it was partly just like, I've always kind of felt that way of myself because I was like, well, I'm not good enough. Like, so from a kid being like, you're not a drawer, you can't draw, like you're not an artist, you're not. And so I kind of was like, well, okay, like, and I think I got the bug of, okay,
Taking the challenges.
I'll prove
Chip
you
on the
wrong, a
shoulder.
little bit of a
Yeah.
chip on the shoulder, early career, where it's like, well, no, I'm gonna try to demonstrate that I can. And so I liked going into those places where they were kind of like a little bit of, because then you're with people that are also in that same mindset in a different way in terms of like really wanting to do well, wanting to like kind of go up against, at the time it was like the Ogilvies of the world. Ogilvy and Saatchi were like the top agencies, and BBDO had like Francis Wee had just come in. He was like a very renowned, ECD at the time. He was Singapore's first black pencil. So I was like, great, I'm gonna go in and like work under Francis Wee. I partnered at that time with again, another very senior art director called Leong Wai Fong, who was running the KFC account. And it was like, you're going to partner with this guy. You're going to run KFC. And I was like, great. Okay. And so again, I went through that process of then learning disciplines. Like I learned then how to shoot food, like shoot KFC. But it was like, 30 to 50 grand TV spots, right? Became an expert in that. And also like, okay, you've got 22 seconds to tell a story, 8 seconds which is going to be food shot and price.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, again, like the discipline of understanding that world. And then I was surrounded again by like really amazing talent in all of the agencies I've been in. I think that kind of got me to then, okay, I'd been 8 years in Singapore, and I was like, I think I need to break out of the Asia market. So at that time in particular, and it was like, you're either going to go to the UK or you're going to go to America. And that started my journey of then trying to break into the American market.
How did you break into Modernista?
Took a long time.
Modernista, for those who don't, it doesn't exist today, but it was one of the most innovative companies, out there. It was top notch. Their website was a breakthrough website. Yeah. Like, how did you break through, into that?
So I spent probably 2 years trying to get into the US market. And it was the usual things that you would expect. People obviously have to sponsor a visa. And I still have these memories of basically trudging along New York streets with a portfolio. It was like the heavy portfolio. Yeah. And, I would try to email people, but generally would not get a response.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would just go to the office and I would get to reception and I would just say, I'm here. I'm from Singapore. I'm a copywriter. Is there anyone that would be willing to look at my book? And I tried to get to people that could make decisions, but it was really hard. Mm-hmm. And so then I was working with a recruiter at the time, Greg Chrisman, who was at a different kind of, that's a full story, full circle story there as well, in terms of he is the guy that hired me at Apple. But he was amazing. He was just like, he just loved my book. And the reason he loved my book was because it was so eclectic. It was a very, and again, like I didn't understand this at the time. I was just thinking like, well, I've got this amazing design project. It was like, I think it was Crown, one of the bubble wrap like poster I'd done. It was like, like won gold at Cannes. And what I realized is that the American market just didn't know what to do with that. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a creative, I write, I'm a copywriter. And it's like, well, okay, like, but are you a TV writer? And so the reality is like the way that most of those teams were structured in the US at the time was like, you're either above the line or below the line, right? Yeah. Like you were a pretty badass kind of like film writer and doing the big TV commercials. Yeah. And that was not me. My portfolio I had TV, but it was fine. It was definitely, but not at the level of what the US market was producing. So they're kind of like, they would never look at my book and go like, you're going to be a writer for big.
Yeah. For our audience, could you explain, what above the line, below the line is?
Line generally meant like TV. Yeah. So TV and, radio, print, out of home, generally fell into that category. Below
like awareness level creative, right? Like big upper funnel.
And it's like, mostly what we would consider like brand focus, right? Yeah. And then below the line was kind of like, well, like CRM and email and like digital banners and stuff like that, but not very sexy stuff. And I was like, but in Singapore, you learn all of it. It was like, well, I would write banner ads and I would do like I worked on like StarHub at the time and I was like writing DMs. Like I did a lot of DM work. Like I think my training ground was DMs. I did a ton of direct mailers. But for different clients, because that was a big thing. And I did a ton of print ads, like long copy, technical print ads for like compact computers and other things like that. So I had like a very good range of like, I can write, at that point, it's like I can write long form writing for across the different things. And so that then led to Modernista being the one agency that was kind of like, we like this crazy book. They didn't want traditional creatives. Yeah. They wanted people that were very much wired differently. And so that kind of began that journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think the lesson here that I feel, that audience could really use is, if you want something, you got to put in the work for it, right? Like you took this trip to New York, you took this trip to London, right? Like, I mean, people do, self-promotion direct mailers, right? Like, I mean, because I feel like today that discipline is missing or like that, that action, might not be as prevalent as back in the day. Like I remember like the first exercise that I had to do, where when I was in art school was do a self-promo direct mailer.
Yeah, I did.
Right?
I did the same thing.
Yeah. I did like a mirror that said, "Look at yourself. You need my help."
They might not have liked that, but yeah.
Nobody liked that.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. I'm trying to think I can't remember what DM I had done. Because again, we were like, oh, let's do a DM, right?
Yeah.
Could you explain DM again?
Oh,
Direct mailer,
direct
like a
mail.
self-promotional, like a
Okay.
thing.
Usually it was like, like it would be like an unboxing now. It'd be like some kind of like thing you would receive. It was usually 3-dimensional because we were always trying to make it interesting.
To creative directors we would send,
Yeah.
just to like self-promote ourselves. And that's also kind of showcases our thinking.
Do people still do that or has
I
that
think
here and
changed
there.
now?
what I've seen some folks
yeah.
do it. You see it on AdAge once in a while, right? Like, oh, this creative created this website or the
Yeah.
social account, and they're doing,
Yeah.
it's just medium has changed now,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Less so now, but I think it was just like, it was hard to get people's attention, and from more so now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
So something
yeah.
for our audience also to learn. And what would you advise them to do now in terms of like how to get into that US market if they are trying to?
Yeah,
Come
US market
here
or even in the agency world,
yeah.
creative world. Like, how do like?
I mean, I think like, and this goes,
Yeah.
I think a little bit broader to kind of what I look for, and what I think has been true throughout my
Yeah.
career in terms of like people that I hire, and is like usually when you're thinking about hiring and the type of people that I need, it's usually because I need to solve something.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But people that are trying to break into the industry or trying to just get out there, I think part of it is just showing interest and being, without being annoying,
Yeah.
like follow up, like
Yeah.
kind of show that you really do have a hunger to learn and be
Right.
curious. And that can swing the other way, like, because like there's also people that just like hound you sometimes, and you're like, okay, like, dude, like, enough. But there isn't a piece of just being like on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
apply the
And-
funnel to yourself. Be top of mind.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's one person that I know very well now, who I sometimes will send that same email. Remember this email that you never responded to me on?
You want to know a little secret? Like, you were one of those people I actually
Correct.
wrote to as well.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
LinkedIn.
exactly.
Did you get
Yeah.
a reply?
I don't know.
I don't think you did. I don't think you did. It was, and Verizon was a very specific area where it's like I probably had hundreds
Yeah.
Oh.
of inbound, and I never got to any of that stuff.
Yeah. All right, great. I think now that we have tea, please
Yeah.
take a sip. We
Thank you.
have a little
Yeah.
tea time section.
You'll have to answer with one word or sentence. Are you ready?
Sure, why not?
All right, let's
Yeah.
go. Your biggest inspiration?
Kids. Yeah,
Love that.
a little cliche, but kids are the ones that keep you learning, keep you on your toes. Yeah, kids
Yeah.
are the ones that they're the ones I work for now.
2026 trend you hate.
Oh, 2026 trend I hate.
Let's go attack a country.
I mean, that's a good one. The discourse around AI.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'd call it a trend, but you could argue that it was trendy to be all in on AI. It's pretty trendy to hate AI right now.
The 2026 trend you think is here to stay.
Getting off screens.
Overrated job title in 2026 is?
Chief AI officer.
Okay, this is a fun one. Claude or ChatGPT?
I mean, there's only one right answer to that. ChatGPT. Yeah.
The best boss you've ever had and why?
Rob Sherlock, both a personal and a professional mentor.
One word to describe the worst person you've worked with.
Micromanager, control freak. Those things don't usually work very well for creative people.
One color to describe your least favorite project you worked on.
Yellow.
Why would you choose that?
I don't like yellow.
Okay.
I like yellow in nature, but I don't like yellow as a color.
As a color. Okay.
Yeah.
The biggest risk you took that you don't regret in one sentence.
Every career pivot I've made.
An underrated skill every creative should have.
Curiosity.
The biggest lie in corporate culture is?
They're looking out for you.
Or be authentic. Be yourself.
The worst career advice people still follow.
That was a good one. I don't really-
Work-life balance.
I mean, that one is definitely like just not always a reality.
Yeah.
If depending on what you're evaluating it against. Like you can do that, but the outcomes are going to be different.
Yeah.
And so you have to be okay with that.
And if you had to restart your career tomorrow, what would you not do again?
Work for that micromanager.
Yeah. Maybe would have
Stop.
no, it's helpful prods. I probably would have left earlier than I stayed longer than I should have.
That's the end for our rapid fire. You did great.
Thank you. Tough questions for rapid fire.
I
mean,
know.
like, man.
It just was very interesting for me when you said your biggest inspiration are your kids. I also saw that you got a business degree at Auckland University. Was it after your kids or?
So the business degree is a funny one, and my wife, this was her favorite story for a long time, which I was like, I'm gonna change the story.
You want to hear her story?
Well, so going back to the AUT thing, I did the 3-year diploma, which technically it changed to a 3-year degree, but I got caught in this cycle where then they created a 4-year degree. And so I kept on upgrading to basically then what became a Bachelor of Business. So at the end of that was when I did the internship, but I still had one paper.
Yeah.
So when I did the internship, I basically got the full-time job, and I was like, well, I'll just complete this paper.
Yeah.
Like I'll do it in a few months' time or whatever. And of course, that time never came. So I never completed the bachelor part of my degree. And so I was like, I'll get round to it. And of course, I never did. Career took off. And then I was like, well, I don't know, do I really need a degree now? And so my wife then, 10 years into career, 15 years into career, then 20 years into career would say to people like, well, Andrew never completed his degree and he did fine. He's successful. Like, and it was like,
she has a point.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Yes, you don't necessarily need it, but I was like, I do think it's important to complete things. Yeah. And I had this opportunity post Verizon, and then when I was working at Airco, where my life was just eased off. It was just like I was able to concentrate, able to do things that I wanted to do. And I was like, I'm going to finish this paper. And so I had stayed in good contact with AUT at the time. So I had a good relationship with him, and I was like, hey, can I finish this thing? And they're like, dude, you're like way past like the window. But they said, okay, write a special paper, a thesis on your career to date and how the evolution of advertising and marketing has changed for a creative mind.
Right.
So I wrote that and I completed the degree. So
Amazing.
I did that in 2025, I think, or 2024.
Oh, it was recent.
Yeah. So I like 2024.
Last year
So how was it raising 2 kids, being at a leadership position, and also doing completing your degree?
So the degree part was actually not that complicated.
Okay,
that was
so
like,
it's just like
I needed to study for it and write, 6,000 word essay, but that was fine. Raising kids, in a very high powered kind of corporate job was tough. And
would love to hear a little bit more about that. Yeah.
I mean, we are obviously, in a very similar, maybe our kids are a few years younger to yours, right? In a similar boat. So would love to hear your experience there.
And also you coming from a different background, them raising here in America, how's that amalgamation of culture coming together for you guys?
Wife comes from a very different culture as well.
Wife is from Singapore. So Trish is from Singapore. So she's, city girl, loves New York, 11 now. And my youngest is 7, almost 8, and she's born in New York. When I would say like when I was at Apple was kind of the first kind of transition from agency world to like corporate world, but it was also New York to San Francisco, just the grind of what like that was good for me. Cause like New York is hard. Like, and I was like, I want to get out of New York. And most people get to that point because if you don't know how to make New York work for you, and I figured it out now, it's like, it's just going to keep grinding at you. And so when you're in the agency world, that's relentless. And so I was just like, and you know, we were young at that time. We didn't have kids, but we were just like burning, right? Like working hard, partying hard, like, but you're in that cycle. There's really no 9 to 5 or Monday to Friday. So the transition to Apple was like a good reset because Apple is, you know, is pretty disciplined about that. And also you don't work weekends. So it was a kind of a great like immersion into like parenthood, to being at Apple and having that balance in terms of like, it wasn't like gonna kill you. And so, you know, we did that and stayed in San Francisco for 3 years. And then I transitioned to the Verizon role, which was back in New York. We really wanted to live in Brooklyn area. We're in Carroll Gardens. And so like the first lesson there is like, we just took on too much. I didn't understand, was naive going into the role probably in terms of just like the level of like effort and time and everything that was going to take out of you.
You were the first chief creative officer.
Yeah.
at
So
Verizon.
first chief creative officer, I mean, essentially there was, you know, it was a blank canvas. It was like, we want you to go and build an in-house organization. We've got this new floor that we've built on the 10th floor of, you know, 140 West in New York. Like, and of course, like I had the conversation with Diego. Diego was the CMO, about like what the vision for it should be. And, you know, I presented to him like what my idea of like how you would do this and what kind of skills and capabilities you need to build into it. Like I was bringing I was very excited about that role, like coming in, because it was like, you know, really building from the ground up, something pretty special, and learning from all of my experiences across the agency world, my Apple experience. And like within all of those experiences, I've also just been like, there's some things that I think work and some things that don't work. So I was like, I'm going to put this to test myself. I talk about it a lot, like prove it, right? Like, what do you think a good like in-house agency structure looks like? And like, how would you do it? Is it the Apple model of like, you only have Mal, Media Arts Lab, and then predominantly internal teams? Or is it something else? Is it more hybrid? Or where Verizon was, is like they had like 19 agencies on their roster at some point. And it was like, that doesn't work.
Wow.
Could you tell a little bit, just to interrupt you there? It's just for creatives and young creatives looking out there, right? Like that shift from coming up with great campaigns to now suddenly you are putting a vision for a department that is going to drive creativity at a scale like that you even might not have seen before, right? Like how does one train themselves, you know, to get to that level?
You don't. I think you have to live it. And I think now, there's more avenues to prepare for that, because the in-house brand side, you know, is a whole thing now, right? And so
you
like
went
you
in
can,
there when it was a dirty word, like going in-house was considered.
So there were really no other brands, and this is like 12, 13 years ago now when I was at Apple, it was like that were doing that. There was Facebook was doing it a little bit. There was the, you know, Google Creative Lab, but that's like very very experimental kind of group. It's not an in-house agency in the same way that in-house agencies are defined today. So that was really it. Like, and so I was like, I think there is a better model here for sure. And it was just kind of like trusting my gut on, there are parts of what I think work really well from an in-house standpoint that I learned from Apple, which is just like, you need like less hands on the creative product itself. Get rid of those dirty fingers, like that have just got their hands everywhere, right? And agencies are really good at getting their fingers on everything and leaving stains everywhere, right? Because like they're kind of they're touching too much stuff. But from a brand standpoint, that's their fault. Like they've given up what should be governance around what the brand represents. in terms of like design and writing, and they, and again, like, because that's how it has traditionally been done, is that the agencies do that. But if you're not disciplined about how you use your agencies, then you're going to get into this place where it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. And so I was coming from the perspective of, I think you need to like own certain channels that also have the highest, kind of surface area with your customers. So things like retail, digital, like where are the places that are getting the most eyeballs? It's not really always TV, yes, to a certain extent from a broad media standpoint. But I was coming at it in terms of like, okay, like if you can have a smaller team, a design team, writing, creative team, that then is going to have more surface area.
Yeah.
You're going to, especially with a brand like Verizon, you're going to have like more impact across how that brand starts to transform, because you just got fewer people touching things. And that agencies, if you point them in the right direction and you actually give them clear swim lanes, can be very good at what you need to do as well. Like, and so I was just like, I want the best minds on the business, meaning internal teams, external agencies, but also like, I want to work with like amazing entertainment companies, like like media and stuff was also emerging as being like, well, you can actually, not the traditional media like arm of a agency, but like entertainment media, celebrities, etc. Where it's like, well, they're a creative partner. I would get this question a lot. I'm sure you got that question. It's like, oh, like, are you a believer in like the in-house model? And I'm like, it depends. Depends on what the brand is. Depends on where the brand is in their life cycle, and then like, and I'm not like just pro in-house and like against agencies, because everyone wanted to pit the agency model against the in-house model, and I was like, no, I'm not playing that game. It's not about that the agencies are wrong and that the in-house model is better.
Over time, obviously, you join, you build this department. Like, again, I think our audience would really love to know like what while on the job, right? Like how, because obviously I'm guessing 30% of your time was sitting in finance meetings and business, in HR meetings, right? Like how do you as a creative, because your sole focus is just put the blinders and create the best work ever possible, but now you're creating an environment where other creatives
that shifted pretty dramatically to, I became, and not in a good way, right? I would have these conversations, with leadership as well, around like, you kind of got me focused on the wrong things too. Like, this is not, you don't need me doing this stuff that you're looking for. And part of what I then did when I evolved the in-house group, because I was essentially the CCO and responsible for building the in-house group, but I was the CCO for all the agencies too. So I was like, essentially 2 jobs. I was working crazy hours, and like towards the end of my time at Verizon, I would tell people that I used to have an hour for someone if they would be like, Andrew, can I? And I used to hate this about my job. So I had these amazingly talented people, very senior people, Tiffany, like Joaquin, like being like, Andrew, we just need like some time of you to get, so we can get teams moving. And I hated the fact that they couldn't move on stuff. And like that over the period of time at Verizon was like, we can we'll have weekly meetings. It'll be an hour. And like, we were always in meetings because we were doing like reviews and stuff like that. But like the time they needed, where it was like, can we just chat on the phone kind of time, which was actually the most important kind of creative review, like real talk time, which is just like, I think this is what we need to do. Like, and you chat about it and you debate a bit, is like different from being in a meeting. It became an hour or 2 hours every week, to then being like, well, I've got 30 minutes, to then being like, I've got like 15 minutes. Can you chat now? Like, to then being like, I got 5 minutes before I'm about to go into another meeting. Like, can you chat now? To me, then being like, I've got a minute, to then being like, the next thing I'm going to say is like, it's going to be my last fucking breath. Right. Like, and I'm going to be dead essentially. And that part of I hated that part from a creative standpoint, because like, it's just not how you do good work. And so part of what I ended up, and again, like, this is like, put on your big boy pants too, in terms of like, you got to level up and be a leader and all those things, which is like true. I hired, a head of creative for the in-house agency, Mike Wente. So he led that group. So it took some of that pressure off me to have someone that was actually then dedicated and focused on the in-house agency and the operations of it. Because what I was doing was I was also like a CEO of the in-house agency. I was running the operations. So I was very heavily involved in operations, hiring, finance, all of the things around how an agent, which is great, like all amazing learnings, but I wasn't focused on the work. Like I was, but I was like,
would you advise entrepreneurs like us and other people who are really getting into the startup culture or whatnot, like what would be the piece of advice, or what I could hear you saying is like, know when is the time to delegate and get support?
For sure.
Shruti and I honestly we like what you're explaining, and I had my own thing at Walmart that way, but right now we're in that phase, which is like
same struggle.
But you have to do it for a period of time.
10 to 14 meetings a day. We're raising the same kid, but even for us to talk, it's just like, I have 1 minute before I run to this next thing, even between us, and we live in the same house.
So I think there is a time and a place where you're going to be in that storm.
Right.
Like I'm in the storm right now with OpenAI, where I'm like building in it, but I'm more centered because I know what that looks like and what that means. Whereas then it's like, I don't know, I was technically a pretty young CCO going into that job. I was like 37 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I think you need a bit of that. Like you need the ambition, you need the hunger and the energy to go into those roles.
Yeah.
And you figure it out. That's why it goes back to like, no, of course I was going to be able to do that role. I was like, I figure it out. Right.
And it's okay. Take the leap.
Right. But I think the leadership thing then kicked in terms of like, okay, like, no, make sure you then also have the right team, because in a corporate structure, if you don't build the right teams and the support, like you will fail very quickly. On the in-house agency side was important. Making sure that wasn't on all of the operational aspects was important, because then it basically then making sure that my direct reports were really strong at then driving agency and other things, so that I was able to concentrate on the work.
So even what's the secret sauce there of like what do you look for when you're looking for the right fit, the right hire?
Well, I mean, one thing that I think is like something I try to be mindful of a lot is like, you get what you tolerate. And that was a lesson in terms of like, if you are essentially stepping in or doing the work because either you don't have the right team in place, maybe that you've got people that are not performing, like all of that is like feeding into your ultimate like time and performance and other things like that. So like address the things that are not working as quickly as you can. And I probably, early days I probably sat on some of that stuff too long, or it's like, well, we'll figure it out, or like, because I have this like huge capacity to take on things. And I think that's another thing that I've learned, is like to not take on too much, because like, especially in a corporate environment, they will give it to you. They will give all of it to you. And I was just like, give it all to me. Like, give me more, give me more. I got all this capacity. And then you realize that like, you're just like, you're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. And so like that became, challenging for me and from a leadership standpoint. So I think I had a great coach that kind of, gave me that frame of reference, which was like, make sure that you're solving for those things that are not working very quickly, because they will, basically they become the Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Very,
we agree 100%.
Those problems become bigger.
Shruti and I had a series of like some horrible hires that have set us back, in our journey.
Yeah. The hiring thing is really problematic. I was very tight on that at first. And then as you scale, I think that's the other thing that I'm, the leadership team at OpenAI is very conscious of, is like, we have, people that have seen and done like amazing things, like my boss, Michael Tabtabai, who I worked with at Modernista, Zach, who's kind of OG there. He's been there for, a while now. We've all been at some pretty big places, Google, Meta, Apple, like, and we're very aware of like, we do not want to recreate some of those environments as well in terms of like what we liked and what we didn't like about things. And I think that's really important in terms of like, from a hiring perspective, it's like we're scaling really quickly. And so you have to be really deliberate about who you hire and make sure that the right culture fit, because I hired all the first wave of people at Verizon, you know, my head of production, my head of creative, my head of strategy, head of ops, like these roles became my first layer. But then at some point I was like, these CDs, you guys, you have to make decisions.
Yeah.
And then I was not able to vet and meet every candidate. I mean, we went from 0 to 300 people within 18 months.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like,
Wow.
this is not,
Yeah.
this
That's
just, you
amazing.
you can't
Yeah.
do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but then we let in a lot of people that I'd be like, why did we hire these people? It's like, and this is a problem with a lot of places. It's like, you know, like culture is like mold, right? Like you get a bit of mold, it's just going to keep growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
protect the lab
Last
and keep it
guess.
clean. Like you're gonna have those problems.
Our last guest, one of our mentors, and she said like culture eats strategy for breakfast, you know, like it's.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And look, like I think, you know, we were like the 140 crew, which is what like the original name of the team. It's a very strong culture because it had a lot of people that like were the builders and the ones that I hired that were willing to take that risk and were ready in their career to kind of go into like what was very undefined territory. And I was very open to them about that. I said, like, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know where the group's going to ultimately end up, but like, do you want to join and build something? And I think that's still been a lesson in terms of like what I'm looking for is people that are okay with ambiguity, that are okay with things changing all the time, that can be, you know, work through those challenges with a fairly like stable head on their shoulders, because like that's actually the best places to be is in those environments. So, and that's why like now for me going back into an environment like OpenAI, it's like I'm kind of going back into the lion's den of like crazy when it comes to like back to building and stuff like that. But that's also the time of the most, like when you think back on your career, like these are the environments that are always the most exciting.
We obviously, I mean, on LinkedIn, you wrote about, and you mentioned Michael, your current leader. Like he's obviously, you know, being of a mentorship figure, you know, to you. Like, could you talk a little bit about it? Obviously, like you know, when we after Mallorca, like, we started doing like this peer mentorship relationship as well. Just importance of mentorship, you know, would love to hear from you around like, and you know, like what do you look when you take on a mentee, or what do you look for when you go find a mentor, right? And what can young people, you know, take from that, right? Like that, because a lot of people are very shy to even ask or even think that, oh, mentorship can actually have a real dramatic change in your career in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of mentorship in a very much like, you know, 360 way in terms of like those above you, the mentees themselves. But actually, I think the most important mentorship layer is actually the peers. Yeah. Because you don't really think of it that way, but my peers are the ones that then when you think about, you know, further in your career or like when you look back on stuff, it's those peers that have gone on to do other amazing things, but are the ones that are kind of living the experience with you, are the ones that can kind of help you're kind of like in the grind with them. Yeah. And so you might not necessarily be seeking mentorship advice from the peers, but they're very important to kind of make sure you have relationships with. Yeah. And like Verizon, I had some really good, you know, peer relationships in that sense that like helped from a mentorship standpoint in terms of like, I know what you're going through and you're going through the similar thing and you're dealing with this person and I'm dealing with that. And you're kind of like trading skills and like, you know, methodologies with them. Whereas like the true mentor, like the kind of mentor in the traditional sense are more about like giving you a perspective on past experience and what has worked for them. Yeah. You know, like I've always followed that guidance pretty strongly, but also like, but they don't know what you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So only you can make those decisions oftentimes. So I think mentors are really important in that respect of like just kind of the experience that they can bring. And then I think the mentees themselves, I learn from a lot because they're like the ones that are like, they're going to tell me and teach me the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
It's
like,
reverse
you know,
mentorship,
like,
right?
yeah, and it's
Sometimes.
just like, okay, great. Like this person is really good at this. Like I'm going to spend more time with them because they're going to help me like upskill in areas that I'm clearly not good at. So I always try to, you know, think about the team dynamic that way too. And what keeps the, you know, I think the brand fresh and relevant is making sure that you've got all those things.
Yeah.
That dynamic working, you know, really well.
You are at one of the most talked about companies in the world right now. What would it take for a young budding creative, right? Let's in your field, like to really get your attention and get a job at OpenAI? Like what would you look for, you know, amongst the sea of creatives, you know, that are graduating, that are looking for the job, that are getting probably laid off, you know, in the midst of, you know, all the mergers and acquisitions happening in the industry, right? Like what do you look for?
I mean, I specifically from a creative perspective, I'm always looking at versatility and diversity in the work itself, because the biggest risk you can take is just like finding creatives that are really only strong in one particular area or discipline. And you do need that skill set, but you can be more targeted about it in terms of like, we need an amazing motion design team. Then you can kind of know how to hire for that, like evaluating people's work and with that very like kind of singular lens. But the versatility aspect of it and just like someone that I look at and I can go like, they're clearly very curious and quite prolific in lots of areas, means to me that they are willing to try different things, that they've probably taken on jobs that like, you know, have evolved over time. And I think like what that means for me is that like, because I don't know, especially within the AI space, especially at OpenAI as well, is like, well, the product and the models are going to continuously evolve, right? We're in a moment in time where it hasn't settled in. And so the type of work that we're going to do, or the type of brand product work that needs to go out there, is going to be really like, is an unknown, in the sense of we're just going to have to flex in lots of different directions all the time. And because the industry moves so quick, like you need people that are going to be adaptable and can pivot with that industry shift. And so that's usually what I'm looking for in terms of like the kind of personality and the characters of people, is like that tenacity and kind of desire to be part of that change. But then the work itself like just has like a really nice range. And the back of my mind is like, craft means different things in for different brands, right? Like if you're at Apple or OpenAI or, you know, Nike, or let's say some other brands, it's like you're going to look at like the craft through the brand lens. And so like that's important too, in terms of like, wow, we're thinking about people that know how to like make the work feel more tactile and more human, because we're an AI company in the same way like technology is mostly, for most tech companies, invisible. Say at Verizon, you're working with a network thing that people can't see. So you want to bring more of a human element to it, right? It's like, so then when you're looking at the work, you're trying to make sure that like, okay, are you pulling from that in the work that you see? Like, can they pull, have they got emotion in their work? Is there, you know, is there the craft and the tactile aspects there that makes it feel unique? I think those are definitely kind of just like areas that I look at in terms of like portfolios. And
anything that you think, like any crazy, you know, ways kids or young folks have tried to like approach you, like any stories they have that you want to share?
I mean, a lot of people are obviously using agents in different ways. You know, building stuff, which I think is like there's a whole culture of that from a
Right.
developer standpoint right now. But you'd be surprised. Like I think most portfolios and books that I'm still seeing like still read very traditional. That like for a few years, right? Like Verizon, yes, I was looking at a lot of portfolios. Like I felt like I had a nice break from having to do that. But like what surprised me is that even when I was probably at Verizon, I was still kind of like, and again, this is where I'm just like, the industry's still behaving the same way. Most of the portfolios are still filled with 30-second TV spots.
And that's probably why the demise of our industry
And I'm
is,
like, guys, like this was a problem when I was hiring 6 years ago. And there's a role for it. It's like, absolutely. And yes, I'm looking for amazing film guys, like to that can shoot amazing, films as well, because that's a big body of work that needs to be done. But what I generally lean towards are those that work at brands more maybe like the direct to consumer space, like the Squarespace and Stripe and like Cash App, like companies that are very much in the scale mode.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you're internal, then you know that like every week you're dropping something new.
Yeah.
New feature, new product. Like you have to constantly help explain like these things. And so those that have worked in those environments, I think are just more dynamic creatives because the majority of their output is digital and social. So anyone that like has a really like natural gravitational pull towards social are also like the types of creatives that I still look at, because the ones that understand that like social is also like an editorial format and that that are producing beautiful mini campaigns within that are the
publisher
ones
mindset.
So the publisher kind of creative is like is really the ones that I think would do very well at a place like OpenAI.
Do you check out the Apple's new TikTok?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. So stuff like that for me is like where I think people that have if you want to be a young contemporary creative right now, I still need to have this editorial mindset about like how you get your work out into the world, because that's where everything lives.
And a little bit of chip on the shoulder,
like and a chip in a good way, right? I've lost the chip's gone. Like I think I lost the chip, which is maybe goes to
I don't think so.
Goes to the
you
books.
become head of marketing from being a chief creative officer to now running B2B. I mean, it's
But
like you're
that's
still
that's less
transcending and opening new doors and opening new ways,
true. In that sense, it's like definitely still want to demonstrate that creatives can should have. Like I've always said, it's like I will, at some point maybe I want to be a CEO of a company. It's like, why not? Like why can't the creative visionaries be the ones? Because they're the ones that are closest to like culture. They're the ones that understand the consumer. They don't understand in the same way that like a performance marketing team or like the things that you would say like the commercial marketers, like no, they understand the market. And it's like true, but I can have those people to do that role. Like who's setting the brand and the top, like I think brand is so underrated. And I still am always shocked by like, it's not a secret why Apple and all these other great companies are who they are.
Yeah.
True.
Yes, they have an amazing product brand.
But they have an amazing,
they have amazing
brand.
brand. It's like brand, it will make your company. And again, like share price and brand equity that you can build into that company is still like, I think is still underrated.
Yeah. See, I've worked for a company, like most of my formative leadership years were at Disney, which is
Disney
probably the strongest brand
understands
on the
that,
face of earth, right? It doesn't matter which restaurant you go to.
And so does Walmart.
Anybody you ask.
Yeah. Your point about like, what am I trying to achieve, or like the chip? It's like, it's less of the chip, more of like, I think we need more examples of creative leaders out there doing
100%.
interesting. And there's a lot of amazing people doing that now. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think like, we need necessarily more examples than like in 10 years ago, we probably did. Because it's like everyone was at an advertising agency. Now you've got a lot of people that were advertising agencies have got their own companies. They've got like amazing brands. They're, working like for amazing, like, in-house teams. Like it's spread out now. And so I don't think, and some are like CMOs, some are CEOs. It's like, it's
some are founders.
It's kind of leveled out.
Like the D2C revolution, has really like enabled a lot of creative storytellers to build those companies on social.
We have some questions from our audience, Andrew, for you. And starting off with, what's the hardest decision you had to make in your career when there was no clear right answer? These are like tough ones.
I would have to say it was making a decision around Black Lives Matter on whether the company was going to say Black Lives Matter in social or not as a hashtag. And the decision from the company was no. And I had to bear that decision and help the team understand that. And there was no right answer to how that was going to play out, but it was really tough.
Yeah. How do you make the right judgment call when you don't have enough information or confident it will work out?
Usually I just try to compartmentalize it and break it down into smaller pieces so that I can just like make a first decision. Because like that's probably the toughest part is moving. And then once you move, it will just open up other things that you're going to have to evaluate. You'll evaluate it as you go along, but you have to make the first move.
What's something that worked early in your career that didn't later in your career?
Kind of getting frustrated with the process as a young creative, like, and getting upset about why an idea didn't survive really doesn't help you anymore. Like, as you go through your career. I think for me there, I've just ended up being like, okay, well then I'm just going to go more upstream and try and solve it there.
What's a decision you made that looked right on paper but felt wrong in your gut?
So I'd say that there's like lots of things that are usually that way when it comes to like creative decisions around ideas and production decisions that I'm kind of like instinctively know, but based on the circumstances, you're kind of moving down a direction where you just got to go with it. And that's usually panned out to be like, I should have just not executed that idea.
So when you know in your gut, do you still do that, or do you now listen to your gut?
I listen to my gut more on that piece of it. A lot of the things that I learned through from a leadership standpoint was like, there was probably a part of my leadership style early on that was like really about empowering teams to make decisions.
Right.
And giving them the space, which I still think is important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also got to give them like these boundaries and like foundations to work against, which is like very clear decision making that maybe I wasn't always doing.
Yeah.
And I've tried to be much more deliberate about like the decisions that I'm making and the ones that like they can
make themselves. Very well said.
Thank you very much for making the trip
of course
all the way to the valley, and we're so glad that we got you while you were here in LA.
I know, we got super lucky.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to ask our audience to follow? Is there like a charity? Is there like a personal project that they can follow you, and like anything you want to promote here?
I mean, I'm a part of an organization called Wellbeings that is really at the intersection of the environment, people, and the planet. And so they really look at like a kind of a holistic approach to environmental impact around the world. And so, follow Wellbeings. They're an amazing group of people trying to do some, really tough things with what's going on in the climate and sustainability world. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So before we leave, we ask you, for a book that might have shaped your perspective, that you would love to share with the audience,
Yeah.
and, we have that book here with you. Do you want to tell us what book it is and, like why, somebody would want to read and what can they benefit from it?
Yeah. The book's not new. It's called The Untethered Soul. And it's, I think, a friend of mine gave it to me, and it was probably again during a very kind of tough part of my career progression and leadership. And I got a lot of leadership books given to me, along the way, because I felt like that was a thing for a while. It's just like everyone's got these leadership books and you're supposed to read them. But I read this one, and I think it was just something that helped to like calm the mind for me. It goes into a lot around ego and how like your thoughts manifest around things that are either in the future and in the past, and how to be really like just more grounded and more present. And I think like I just needed that message at that time, and to understand that like actually like you really do need to disconnect like how your mind attaches itself to certain types of things, like your career in particular. Our whole industry has kind of manufactured ourselves, creatives, into being these things, these personas, from the agency days to being like, you're a famous creative, you did this type of work, right? Like, so you become that, right? And I think like whether I realized it or not, as I became that creative, like that has this persona around it. And then even more so with like, as I went through the Apple and Verizon kind of experiences, the corporate kind of veneer and persona that I became was operationalized at like another level altogether, where it's like, you are this person. And I think that that's a really dangerous place to be. And some people thrive on it, and they're, that's their identity. And I realized that that was the thing that I was fighting, was that that's not who I am. And I think I've said this before. It's like, for me, it felt like I was a corporate Broadway show, which is like every day you're expected to get on stage and perform to the character that the company has defined for you.
Yeah.
And when you move outside of that, they don't really want it, right? The rhetoric is that they want you to build culture. They want you to, be your own person. But the reality is they actually want you to fall in line and be a really good executive. And that's for some people. Some people are great at that. And I was really good at that. I am good at that. But there's parts of that that I really disliked. And that's the kind of the ego kind of fighting there, which is like, that's not who I am. And I would rather be this person here. And so I'm just conflicting. And so like, there's only one way to resolve that, is like, then you can't be in that environment. So this book kind of helped me, I think, just like really stay dialed in. And I'm like this with the kids. It's just like, I don't get flustered by the kids really, by anything. Like they could be screaming and doing crazy shit all the time. And it's like, I'm just like, I just go into the zone with them on that stuff. And just try to be, present. And I think like, that and obviously there's, you guys probably know this very well, of like just the meditative aspects of being present, and meditation and yoga and other things that I've kind of done to kind of just be like, there are these different aspects to my life, and I'm not defined by the job one.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to get through that, and to kind of come out where it's like, no, like actually how I identify is much more of like, this is really nothing related to my work in some ways. So again, like even things like this is like, the ego likes these things, meaning I'm here for a podcast. I'm also doing a speaking thing, but my new self doesn't attach to that too much. It used to in the past, because it's like, oh, that's what defines your success, all these things. So yeah, this book is
people at your level, detachment is the biggest
Biggest,
form,
yeah.
superpower in going beyond leaders of leaders of leaders,
Yeah.
so that
It's
is also
beautiful.
the hack,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's about ego is that you got to get rid of the ego, which means that you're no longer the chief creative officer of Verizon and all these things that everyone has built you up to be.
Mm.
Like me going into OpenAI, I'm just like, my mindset is just like, I'm just here to help. I'm just a creative. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
But the other book is interesting because that's like the external landscape, which is like you can't control the environment either. And I think there's this parallel between like the mind, which is like be present, nature, which is why actually like if you think about nature is like probably why again I'm like, yeah, like corporate guy, you've only just figured this out. Why do people like go into nature? Why do they try to be one with nature? Why do religions do that? It's because you know what, like it's about presence.
So if today's episode gave you something new to think about, to share or apply, please subscribe and like, and share this episode. And if you want to be connected with us beyond this content, follow our website, follow us on Substack. You'll get a lot of exclusive insights, behind the scenes, and other content, that really goes behind, how a lot of high achievers, get to becoming high achievers. So thank you very much for following, and I hope you take something back from it, and we'll see you in the lounge the next time.